Yo, the kids official sliding on the instrumental. Nordic combos, twist your mental like forbidden.
Peace to the public and power to the people. Coming to you with all humility for the things that we can and can't control, feeling blessed and very appreciative of y'all in this space where the vulnerable are powerful. Church, and where the most gangster thing you can do is serve. This is All the Way Live.
All the Way Live show. My name is Relake Gila. I am joined by my brother, Miles Francis. We are community activists, entrepreneurs, social impact workers. We dedicate ourselves to the people. We dedicate ourselves to y'all. We appreciate absolutely every single person who keeps watching. What's up, Mom? What up, Momzo? Mama Gila, you know what I mean? And the whole family. So this is always a family affair. So welcome absolutely everybody. We like to say that whether it's one person, 10 people, 10,000 people, everybody is welcome. This here's a show where art meets impact, through information. We break down current topics that are happening in today's day and age. We give you guys some recommended and reviews on some art. We give you impact spotlight, a whole host of things. And this week is a different. Miles, do you know why we do this?
For the people.
We do this show for the people. We do this show for the people, man, because we know that people are going through depression. We know depression's through the roof. We know anxiety is through the roof. We know loneliness is through the roof. We know drug addiction is through the roof. Rest in peace. Rest in peace to my cousin Selko. Rest in peace to my cousin Tabang. And we do it for everybody so that they have a positive space of energy. They can come here, get refilled, and go about their day and repeat some smart stuff to some of their friends so they can sound smart at the dinner table,
Big facts. I love the energy. Come as you are is definitely the vibe. SA is in the building. Word. Appreciate you, bro. The UK is in the building. Shout out to Hassan, our producer. You know what I'm saying? On the boards, keeping everything polished. Right?
We couldn't do this without him.
Couldn't do this without him.
Couldn't do this without him.
Won't do it without him.
I don't want to.
Big facts. Shout out to you, man. You know what's going on. This side, Chicago is in the building. This podcast is recorded on stolen land. This land was cared for by the First Nations, the Potawatomi people, the Council of the Three Fires, and the violence done to remove them from this land is inseparable from the violence that we see in this city today, this country today, and this world today, right? So as somebody who tries to address and confront and acknowledge and heal communities from that violence, it's important to lift up love between Black and Brown people the world over, to lift up love for Indigenous and First Nations people the world over, to lift up love for our brothers and sisters that are closest to us. And I lift up love for y'all. So that's how you know the intro's over and that we're about to get into a super fire show.
Yeah, I get that. But is we live though? Is we like all the way live though? You heard?
So the space where art meets impact. This week, we're going back and speaking about more impact that's been happening, spotlighting things that our friends, our community, interesting things that are happening around the impact space. Sometimes those things are the things that we're doing. And this week, I'm very happy that I got the chance to watch you address a community full of mentors who were about to start mentoring some kids in Chicago. This was a little bit after we delivered some food to some old folks this week. Real grassroots with it. Took some food, put it in the trunk, and delivered it. And then later that week, I watched you speak to a room of people. Shout out to our producer. He's got the videos here. Yeah, my boy Miles was showing a whole lot of statistics and whatnot.
Breaking it down. And it's a privilege to be in that space, right? And so it's a privilege to have this space to showcase and to talk about not only what we've been able to do, man, that have been moving around, you know what I'm saying, but also like the incredible partners in this work. So shout out to New Communities Outreach. Shout out to Sonia. As part of my work with the Center for Youth Violence Prevention, I've gotten to witness and support and be a part of the coming together of like truly like over 50 different organizations around supporting violence prevention from a root causes approach. So understanding that there are reasons, historical and structural, why our communities face the challenges that they face, and we got to address them through housing, through food insecurity, through education, through workforce development, right? Through trauma-informed care and mental health care. So all these organizations come to the table with this goal in mind, and we're able to put together this plan to address violence, specifically in the Bronzeville area, where we were talking to some of these mentors that are going to be mentoring youth in that area. And it was really dope to be able to break that down, the whole plan and the convening of that collective to the people that are going to be mentoring the youth, because they know they have an important job speaking to the youth. But it's also important to me, I feel like, that they know that they're a part of this larger effort to prevent violence, right? So it can't be understated how important it is when you have access to resources to be able to get them to people that need them in real time and address some of the issues on an individual level, but to be able to address it at a structural level too. You know what I mean? To really be making changes that are going to allow for more people to eat rather than have to make up for faults in the system is fire. And to explain people, that they're already a part of that through the community action plan and through their organization's connection to that work was really dope.
What was most interesting for me to learn about is the efforts that the Chicago government took in order to literally separate the people of Chicago, speaking about particular highways that have been built in communities to make sure that people of color stay on one side, and then the preferred people stay on another side. How deep entrenched redlining is. So it was also a very informative experience for me. So it was really cool just to watch you be Mr. Miles Xavier, the local neighborhood Superman.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's cool. I'm glad I can bring you into spaces where the love is there. The love has already been established. But it's like this, right? You know what I mean? Like it is a privilege to be in those spaces and to be able to cultivate those relationships with the people that are doing the work, right? Like I get to support so many different people that are truly heroes that, like, I guess that glow and shine rubs off on me. Mm-hmm. And one of those people is you. Oh, because I wasn't the only one on my mentor tip this week.
A week of mentorship, so it seems.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the opportunity that you offered to the young people, and how they responded, and what that experience was like.
I got look at the picture of the boy. Shout out to the producer for pulling it up. I was very fortunate to be able to get the Chevening Scholarship to go study in the UK, which is heralded as a rather sought after academic scholarship. It's extremely competitive. Tens of thousands of people apply a year, and only they like to flex the statistic. And this year it was 1.37% of people that applied were able to get it in.
So you cream of the crop is what you're telling us.
I'll tell you this, bro. God is good, and God is good. And the real interesting thing about that actual application, right? It was a challenge. It was a very challenging application for me to write because I was forced to break the way that I usually write. I'm very formulaic. I'm very very specific in the structure, and I'm very professional. But in this one, I wanted to be very different and come in as honest as I can and be as me as I can in the structure and the tone and the information. I wasn't trying to impress. I was just trying to share my vision of how important it is for me to change the world and the things that I've done and would like to do to see that happen. And so this week, I just thought, hey man, I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to apply for this. As someone who's been fortunate enough to go through it, let me just offer up spaces for people to just book a slot on my calendar, sit down and go through it. And that's what we're fortunate to be able to do.
You thought you might have something to offer the young people, and it seems like they also saw value in that. A few of them responded and reached out, and without divulging anything that might be confidential, any of the keys that you gave them that might be behind the paywall, we gotta get ours too. But what were those conversations like?
They were fulfilling for me. Because I'm speaking with people who have a passion to want to change the world, so when you're there, all you're trying to do is help them realize the value of how important their work is and the best way to explain it. I'm grateful that I took the approach that I took in my application, because my advice would be yourself. You have to be yourself, and I really do think that my adherence to wanting to not stand out, but make sure that at each point of that application, it was the fullest version of myself. I think that's what allowed me to stand out. The Cheveners are very intelligent people. There's a whole host of accomplished, a whole host of people. So for me to say I'm chosen because I'm better than anything is not particularly true. More so, I think that it's a testament to the value of being passionate about something, working hard towards it, and trying to be yourself. And I think there's, good things follow good people, as my brother Miles would say.
I think you put that and phrased that very, very well and articulately. But I think the ease in which you were able to describe it might make it almost seem like that's an easy thing to do. And it's not, right? To approach an application like that, not from a perspective of trying to impress. What allowed you to be that centered? And like, as somebody who knows you as your brother, like, I know why you believe in yourself, but for the people, like, I believe in you, but like, it takes a lot of belief in yourself, I think, to offer that rather than, the more competitive, more puff your chest out type, I am trying to impress you approach.
But I mean, a lot of the times, this is the beautiful thing about servitude, is that we're not working for ourselves. We're working to help children, and we're working to help our communities. So there's no braggadocio that is relevant when you're speaking about how best to reach children, how best to serve your community. You need to be a servant to the people. And so the confidence, I think, comes from how passionate we are about seeing these solutions. It's not a confidence of what I can do, but it's more so like fueled by the urgency in what we're seeing. And trying to bring that forward with some solutions.
Well, I think mentorship is a huge part of what needs to happen in terms of those solutions, to like make young people in our communities feel supported, but also to like expose them to people who are doing it. You know what I mean? Expose them to people who, I think there's not enough people who've bet on themselves that aren't like, representation in entertainment is cool, but like to bet on yourself in a different avenue, I think is something that's important for kids to see. And as I was like, as I heard that you were doing that, and even as I was talking to the mentors in the room at New Communities, it was like the people that take that time out, right, to share what they've been able to accomplish and learn and the challenges with young people, like, I think a lot of us want to have families and want to pass that on to our kids, but to take pause and say, let me be intentional about passing that out to young people in my community that I might not otherwise interact with. I'm going out of my way to interact with young people in my community. You know what I mean? Like, and give game, respect.
Yeah. And you do that with the Obama Foundation too, right? You work with some of the children from that foundation and you give mentorship resources to them. I'll be even more honest with you. The reason why I did that partly is because I saw you do it, and I was inspired by that. But also, and this is a crazy sentence to say, but like when I was coming up, which is crazy because we're live from the come up.
We're in it. Yeah,
we're in the come up now.
Earlier in the come up.
Earlier in the journey.
Previously in the come up.
Previously in my come up. Because we done came up, but like previously in that journey, there was so many people I'd reach out to, And I wasn't looking for a job. I wasn't looking for money. I just wanted to speak with people that I believed or I felt at the time had experienced so much more than me in the business field. And I wanted to just engage, at an excitement of learning. And I remember telling my mother this. So many of them just ignored, did not respond, did not say anything. And I just remember telling myself that I'll always look to give somebody a chance if they want to sit and speak. Like that's something that I was a bit hurt by. So I try not to be someone who's open. So if you're on LinkedIn, shoot me a LinkedIn message. If you're on Insta, I spoke to somebody from Insta, a young lady that's doing some cool work in Exeter. She was talking about, hey, listen, we're doing this NGO. We want to take laptops and I see you do it. Let's speak and set up the calendar and make that happen. So it's free game over here.
And I appreciate the follow through on that. A lot of people will say, shoot me an email. We'll talk. We'll connect. Let's get coffee. But I see the empty coffee cups. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I appreciate the follow through on that majorly. Yo, go mentor somebody. Go find a mentor. Any mentors you want to shout out? Shout out to my Uncle Julius. Shout out to Franklin. Some fire people in my life have been incredible mentors. Shout out my godmother. Shout out to your mother.
Yeah, word. Shout out Momzo, grandmom. Definitely so many people, and I'm so thankful that it's so much family. A lot of my mentors get pulled from family. My Uncle Munna, my Aunt Lungi. I spend a lot of time speaking to people that have done things. When I'm in a challenge, the first thing I'm doing is I'm calling people that have done it. My father, I'm active with that. So if we can be that for anybody, man, give us a call.
Yes, sir.
Let's get it.
Yeah. We're going to have to slow walk this one. This is intersectional.
What do you mean by that?
My deep reverence for movements and revolution and just radical change, radical thought is coming into context with my desire for unlimited humor.
You are being very politically correct of saying people think that birds aren't real right now.
It's radical thought.
It is radical thought. I'm mad, part of this show, we do so many serious episodes. We're covering protests in Iran. We're covering a whole bunch of serious things. And sometimes we get a topic that comes across our board that is just so perfect.
Feels good.
It feels good to just look at the lunacy of what's happening in the world. So let's really get deep.
Okay.
Into birds aren't real. What?
We'll start here. Birds.
How do you feel about them?
You know what? I've always thought they were real.
Oh, so you're a bird believer.
I'm a bird believer.
You're a bird believer.
I've been a bird believer, but I gotta admit to y'all, I never questioned it. You know what I'm saying? And then I started thinking stuff like, how close have I ever been to a bird? Really?
Well, look. Started in around 2016 by Peter Sindog, specifically, is that there's been a conspiracy theory that has been proliferating that birds aren't real. The birds aren't real movement has picked up with recently in Reddit, where we frequent, organized a march of a few 100,000. No, not 100,000 people. But there was too many people. There was objectively too many people at the birds. Even if it was 3 people, it would be too many people.
Yeah.
And what they say is that birds have actually gone extinct. The government has killed birds.
Word. Assassinated all the birds.
Assassinated
avian
the birds.
assassination. Elimination. of all the birds. The CIA, but did you read why?
I did read why the CIA decided to murder all the birds and replace them, mind you, with spy technology.
Various bird-like drones.
Bird-like drones, spy bird-like drones.
But let's not skip over why, though. Because
we're having birds, too much fun with this.
Why? No such thing. Why did the birds? Why did the CIA get beef with birds?
You're gonna have to walk me through that alley of the conspiracy.
Didn't get there.
No, I was too caught up on how do we know that these birds, the evidence. I was too caught up on the evidence.
See, that's why we got to slow walk this thing.
Let's slow walk it.
So the CIA, they doing their job, right? Supposedly, this is the background, the context. The CIA has supposedly been doing their job, working hard to protect this country from threats, foreign and domestic. They driving to work every day, parking their cars, drinking their coffee, walking into work, and coming out with bird doo-doo on their cars. Yes.
So the statistic that floored me about this conspiracy theory is that they said 83% of bird droppings fall on cars.
See?
Ladies and gentlemen, that's wrong. I will say undoubtedly that is inaccurate.
I mean,
first of all, who's counting?
Second of all, there's a lot of places where there are birds, but no cars.
But most places that have birds have no cars, actually.
But that statistic might be true because the birds, they might have started this whole thing, targeting the CIA and their cars. The CIA wasn't having it. This is America. We stand up for ours. So the CIA was like, ain't gonna be too many more birds out here.
So it's a bird beef that we've It's a bird beef that we've actually unraveled. What I understood about the theory, and look, part of me is very upset that I spent so much time reading about people thinking birds aren't real. That took a lot of my time, but I don't want to be dismissive, bro. And also, we're investigative journalists on the low. We do our due diligence. We spend our time. We do our research.
I didn't take my job that seriously before this case.
Yeah, So the Iran woman protest last week doesn't compare to the research you did.
I mean, that story was humbling, and it made me take an approach that even I think more emphasized that, like, nah, I'm not a journalist, dude. I don't have the weight to throw that around. But this case was like, nah, we're gonna get to the bottom of this.
We did spend definitely too much time investigating this. However, it's interesting because the birds are not real theory actually stems from the early 60s. So apparently, right, is that the birds not being real are part of the JFK assassination. It all fits into why.
Why do they all go back?
Why do all conspiracy theories go back to JFK? I don't understand.
I think it was one of those things where there was just so much other random things happening at the time when he was murdered that they can't all be nothing.
So they can't. So the bird droppings are actually spy technology too. So what we see as bird droppings, they're white, which means they're an adhesive and have some form of a tracking device on them. Is the theory that has been presented by Peter Msindog.
Yeah, got you. Well, Peter went deep. All right, Peter unearthed a whistleblower, Eugene Prince, who used to work at the CIA, but he had to leave because he wasn't with the murder of all the birds.
He wasn't with the murder of the birds. 3 billion birds.
So he was.
It was the number I came across.
Hey, dude. Bird aside.
I'm glad you brought up that Eugene fellow because I also listened to an interview with Eugene. Eugene says that there was photographic evidence. There was all sorts of evidence of exchange that he had, but he destroyed it because it was way too inflammatory. You know, it would have upset the natural order of this world for us to realize that beloved birds, sparrows, pigeons, tweeties,
like ran out of birds. Definitely ran out of birds, yo. But like,
look at the birds I know: pigeons, doves.
Yeah, no swans in there.
I didn't have a swan in there.
Come on, man. No cranes.
Peter, are swans also part of the birds that don't? Or which birds? They say pigeons.
You see,
pigeons, the rats in the sky.
Rats in the sky. Actually, pigeons are very important to social processes. We gotta respect pigeons. They do a lot for ecosystems, I think.
You know, actually speaking about real history, not this nonsense. In China, when they did their first 5-year revolution, part of what the propaganda was to get rid of all the sparrows, because there were a bunch of sparrows, right? And they were also populating the sky, which made it unbecoming. So there was a huge campaign, killed millions of sparrows, which then broke the ecosystem where locusts were able to then eat on the plants in there, which stemmed one of the greatest famines in China's history. You know, an estimated 5 to 15 million, 5 to 40, because no one actually has the numbers from that time, died of starvation during this time due to the sparrow campaign.
See,
real history.
And history is important because it provides context that can. I think that alone is enough to be like, the CIA probably didn't kill all the birds. If you can't kill all the sparrows without an ecological disaster, you probably can't kill all the birds.
This would be my question to the birds aren't real guys, and this is to our Reddit community, and I hope this makes it directly to them.
Mm-hmm.
You're wrong, but here's my question, right?
Mm-hmm.
When birds are left to their own birdly adventures,
mm-hmm.
are they programmed to still do bird stuff, or are they still spying?
Dang, because now you got me thinking about like, what are the robot birds programmed to be doing during like a National Geographic bird documentary?
Do you see?
Are they just like, do they program these birds to act like birds for the doc?
You see, and this is the problem with these sorts of conspiracy theories, right? This is the problem with it. But this actually, like, it was an interesting week of protesting because we saw the birds aren't real protest at first, and we're like, this is hilarious. We gotta cover it. This is great.
It's good.
This is right up our alley. Yes, please, right? But then we saw a lot of other videos coming up of people protesting. We saw particularly some young girls pouring milk out.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing people who are spray painting luxury vehicles, spray painting Aston Martin, spray painting a whole bunch of Ferraris. There's a lot of these, and a lot of them are young people, these protests that are coming up. But the question is like, you saw recently the young girls that threw paint on the soup on the Mona Lisa and then try to stick themselves. Anyone trying to stick themselves to something.
Throw soup on the Mona Lisa.
But like,
it was Van Gogh's sunflowers, but I feel.
But like the Mona Lisa is also maybe look, they going at that art. Is what's happening.
I think this is so yeah, like you said, we read the birds aren't real headline and we're like, let's eat for sure. But I think it's the most interesting part of it. Like, it's funny for sure, but the most interesting part of it is kind of this question around like, when you satirize something, like, how well do you have to, like, what's the responsibility you have to the thing that you're satiring, especially if that's something that in some spaces is to be respected, right? Like, is it disrespect? Because this is like, Birds Aren't Real is a satirical protest, right? It was organized to be a satire. So I think that's hilarious, but I also think when you amplify these elements that are real things in protest, then people have this, it makes it hard for people to differentiate between the satire and the real thing. I'll put it like this, right? You remember Scary Movie? Mm. Those movies that were making fun of like Scream and all the slasher movies. You ever try and think back about like a scene and you couldn't remember if it was in Scream or if it was in Scary Movie? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I think is the interesting thing about this protest, because if you look at two headlines, girls threw soup on Van Gogh for climate change and Birds Aren't Real, you could think that kind of a similar thing is happening behind those two stories if you don't read them, just like outrageousness.
Yeah.
But they're two very different things. And I think, what's the role of satire in confusing that whole mix?
I mean, like, look, you know, I can only speak from my personal experience. If somebody came up to my family's gallery and threw soup over an art piece and then try to glue themselves to the drywall, claiming that climate change, um, it would be frustrating, you know, and it would be out of place. So it's the same thing where you see people throw blood on celebrities, throw powder on celebrities. There does seem to be like, what do you do with that energy of frustration of a problem? You know, is what a lot of people ask themselves, because these people are frustrated and they want to have an outlet to be able to get other people to understand their frustration. But what I would say is that, look, when you make yourself the subject of the change, then the focus is not on the change anymore. And I think there's so much that can be done by people in the right light, as opposed to being destructive, that can allow for like some form of acknowledgement of what it is that they're protesting for. So I don't think you have to throw soup on the Mona Lisa. I don't think people are going to see that and be like, oh, you know what, these climate change girls are right, we need to think about this more. I don't think that's what's happening. So then it raises the point, like, are you for climate change or are you for attention? When you go to Walmart and you empty the cartons and you pour it through, like, the line of like, people don't realize where the line of protest should actually start. You drove there in what did you drive there in? The clothes you're wearing, that's all petroleum. You know, the items that you're using to communicate and post are from cobalt that's been stolen from Africa. So what are we protesting?
Well,
it reeks of entitlement. It reeks of entitlement.
I guess so. My question, I think, then becomes, well, but then who gets to decide what is important enough to protest about, and who gets to decide how people should protest?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying this, being destructive, right? And this is where the fine line is, because like, there's been instances where being destructive is a precursor to large social change. You look at Arab Spring, you look at what happened in the June 16 marches in South Africa. Like, there's many instances. The saying is, blood alone changes the wheels of history, right? But it's I think there's a line there, man. There's a line there. Just doing things for the sake of attention is, I think, what separates those things.
Some people might say that you would need to bring attention to these movements, right? I think some people might say, if I go stand outside with a picket sign of, you know, this big oil company's headquarters, the news ain't coming. They're not going to cover me. They're not going to ask me. They don't care about why I'm here. But I bet you if I go to somewhere that they care about and I throw soup or paint or something that they see as a symbol of their status that they do value, a lot of times people, I think, are frustrated because we value these symbols of status more than we value people. Now I have your attention. Now there's a microphone in my face and somebody wants to know, like, why did you do this? What are you here for? You didn't care when I just had a picket sign. You didn't care when I was writing my blog. You didn't care when I was just posting on social media. So I think from the perspective of, I think bringing attention and awareness to issues is a more and more difficult thing to do in such a noisy era of media. But I think it is an important part of that social change. So I would be very hesitant to tell people that if you're doing something to bring attention, that's not real protest or activism.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's a bit of a difficult one. But I do think that when you begin to inconvenience the life of other people, and I'm so glad our producer brought this picture up, right? So this is a monk in Vietnam, during the Vietnam War, who set himself ablaze, to his death, sat there on fire, right? This was a protest. This was a protest. He sat there. He dressed himself on fire in order to protest for peace. That's how much it meant to this man to be able to do that. People stood around. They watched it happen. They say the man never uttered a single cry throughout that whole period. He just sat there burning to his death. That is the more extreme form, but the intention behind that action is it makes sense. This, I see the intention behind it. There's a thoughtfulness in making sure that the message is at the heart of this, not the destruction being at the heart of it. So going to Van Gogh and throwing soup on the picture for climate change because too much attention is being put into art, that's faulty logic.
Is it?
I don't think it correlates. I just think you want attention.
But I think that's the point.
No, I don't think you're saying the issue needs attention. I think you want attention.
I think it's hard to assign that to people, especially if they have if they have a next step, if they have actually, I'm bringing attention to this for climate change. We're actually against these oil companies. We actually want you to put legislation in place to block them from continuing to affect the environment the way they do. I think that if there is a next step, I don't know if I'm so quick to judge somebody for bringing that attention to them. But I also supremely disagree with the idea that it's not okay to inconvenience other people as you protest. I think a lot of the whole point of protest is that people go about their day-to-day lives not caring what other people are dealing with and going through. And unless you inconvenience them, unless you make it their problem, they're never going to care. So I actually think the whole point of protest is to make other people aware. And a lot of times you do have to be outside of a building. You have to make a lot of noise where people don't like noise. You got to, sometimes when they wanted to save some of the schools in Chicago, they had people chaining themselves to the desks, right? So to say, we value this thing that you're trying to tear down, right? I think the idea that you can't inconvenience people in protests is not true to the spirit of movements that have given us the rights that we have today.
That's fair. And I'm willing to come down on that, right? For specifically the social media activists, put on a mask, cover yourself, right? Cover yourself. Don't draw attention to you in these actions, right? If you want to throw soup on the Mona Lisa and then stick yourself to it, do it anonymously. Make sure that we can't see your face, and don't post it on your page and that type of thing.
You won't let me do all my activism anonymously. I'll be mad trying to be anonymous out here.
You are you're not throwing soup on the Mona Lisa, dog.
But I think why do you tell me to do that? Right? It's because people need to see the representation of people that care as human beings, right? And I think as much as we often go too quick to hero worship of people that we believe are the heads of movements, I think there's also something to be said for seeing somebody that you identify with and relate to taking power and doing something, right? People want to go out and meet with other humans that are like-minded. That's why Birds Aren't Real became a thing. Sure, is it a real issue or not? But people want to know that other human beings feel the way that they feel, and they want to come and express themselves in that space. So I think it's important that I feel what you're saying. Don't do it for the clout. Do it for the movement. Put the movement at the center of it. But I think we're at a time where people ain't really, that George Floyd thing, we was hyped. It was trendy for a moment, but it's fading. And now how do real movements, people that really want to accomplish things and get real things done, get back enough in that spotlight to say, hey, this is still happening. Still ain't no water in Flint. Now ain't no water in Jackson. You know what I mean? How do you get to the forefront of that without being incredibly intentionally disruptive?
Well, listen, being incredibly disruptive isn't only reserved for conspiracy theorists, as we'll learn.
True.
Liz Truss
was
incredibly destructive.
Quickly.
Very, very quickly. Current news, man. Let's get it. Current news. Man, this segment over here, we really try and give you guys an overview on what's happening in the world, keep you updated. We dedicate ourselves to understanding it, researching it, validating it, and then bringing it for you. Like we validated at the last section, birds, they are real. There you go. Go ahead, spread the news. Liz Truss is not a real MP anymore. She has stepped down after only 45 days in office. She resigned following the resignation of her Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, who accused Liz Truss of pretending mistakes weren't made in the wake of their fiscal statements last month. We have spent a lot of time covering the protests that were happening in the UK, specifically for the higher expensive cost, the living waging, the higher living expense in the US, in the UK. We covered Boris Johnson. We give people a lot.
We do. Check out the catalog, man. Brush up.
Yeah,
on all these topics.
All these things work together. They do work together. So Liz Truss, who replaced Boris Johnson, has now been the shortest head of state of the UK, of UK's history, 45 days.
I'm gonna be Liz Truss right quick, right?
Okay.
They talking about I crashed the economy.
Yeah.
They said I tanked the pound or whatever. You know, they acting like it's my fault. We had to bail out the banks. You know what I'm saying? I'm just wondering, ain't it two sides to everything?
No, there's not two sides. They drove this thing down. And shout out our producer who made it a point for us to have to touch on this. And it is a quite important, it is a quite interesting thing to look at. Because a lot of the times the UK is very good at disguising their affinity to protect the rich. They disguise it quite well. But I think this particular instance is a case where the UK was caught, government, the Tory party, red-handed, trying to better things on themselves and better things for themselves. And in the process, proceeded to crash the economy temporarily.
Agree to do it. Money is our madness, our vast collective madness. It's David Herbert Lawrence. I mess with that quote. It's really interesting though to see like we're in this weird space where countries that 10 years ago would have been thought as like the global political powers, pillars of stability, right, on the global stage, right? Maybe not in all ways, but economically and, like going through it politically, drowning economically, you know what I mean? Like bankrupt morally,
decaying socially.
It's really interesting to like be trying to analyze this and actually see something like this, like somebody who was so corrupt only being in office for 44 days, right? Or somebody who was so clearly bent towards bringing more money to the rich. That's a good sign that we're able to get somebody up out of office like that. You feel me? Like bad sign that they were able to be put in place, but good sign that there are still levers and mechanisms in the political process to be like, you tripping? Get out of here.
I mean, look, I think what happened is that the mini budget that was proposed.
She didn't want to admit that one.
She did not want to admit the mistakes that were in the mini budget and the budget, the fiscal budget that was presented is undoubtedly what sparked this downfall and what has led to what's happening now, right? The former finance minister Kwasi Kwarteng, who was often photographed next to Liz Truss as buddies. We saw him get fired shortly after he presented this mini budget. After that, we had another finance minister who came in who then resigned, claiming that she refused to acknowledge her mistakes. She said, I won't leave, and here we are now. Did you look at what was in that budget, what they actually said they were doing?
I didn't look too closely at the budget. I looked at her back and forth response on saying on approving the budget before it went out and then recalling it after the reaction. But I didn't look too closely at it. Tell me what you found.
Okay, we're doing a quick economics lesson now.
Let's do it.
Is there air horns or something that we can do?
Damn. That's all I got for you right now.
I'll take it. That'll do. What about gunshots?
Booyaka shot.
Yeah. Thank you. One good booyaka shot before a finance lesson. It's very simple. What they wanted to do was be able to do a income tax cut. And on this income tax cut, what it looks like on paper is that people would pay less taxes on the income that they made. That sounds like a pretty good idea, right? Except the UK was already moving towards a recession, which means that the bank had to do the best that it could do to make lending be as easy as possible so that they can attract money, filter it into the economy, and now the economy grows, right? Mm-hmm. When you do these types of income cuts, they were presenting that the UK government raises funds, borrows money in order to facilitate those cuts. But those cuts weren't spread evenly across the board.
Oh, they mostly gave poor people the cuts. They were like, y'all need it. It's been rough.
Yes. So the exact opposite. Oh. So if, for instance, anybody that makes 20,000 sterling pound, right, GBP, they would get a return of $157, right? That's okay. If you make 20,000, you get 157 back. That's okay. Same line of income tax cut. If you made 200,000, you'd get 5,220 back. That's a significant jump up from 157.
I want to make more money.
Now, if you made $1 million, you would get 55,250. The difference between someone that would be getting the income back on 20,000 is 157K and 1 million, 55,250. What that means is that people who have more would be able to earn more on their income tax, which is not outrageous. However, when a country borrows money specifically to fund that, what they're doing is stealing from the people to literally pay the rich.
I think the next step that my brain goes to is like, what's the defense is what? Trickle down economics? We gonna spend this? Or they was just what was the case? How do you make the case that that's the right type of spending to do? Did they try?
They said that this would allow for spending to happen. People would have more income in order to be able to spend. However, what was difficult for them to be able to explain away is how this was not thieving. And I think that's the point that really brought this whole thing down, because the markets received it that way. We saw the British pound slide in its value more than we've ever seen it, being at parity with the dollar, which is not usually the case. The British pound has always been a better currency, and almost in a day we saw that go down. So I think like what that means is everyone is seeing this as a robbery of sorts.
And I think, going back to the previous point in terms of like being able to get somebody who's robbing out the house, right? I think it's hard for me to see this political turmoil and as an American not go, oh, hey, that looks familiar. But I think part of me is a little bit jealous of like the idea that somebody was caught doing something wrong and there were consequences. You know what I mean? From the American perspective, there's like, I think a lot of reason to feel like the system is broken because we can't react in real time to stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have the same confidence that if an American politician was caught creating a similar deal, that we would be able to remove them from office so expediently. And I think
you're not, and it's happening.
What do you mean?
I said you're not, and it's happening.
Right. And I think there's a part of me as I'm like researching this is like, why? What's the reason for that? And a lot of like all I could kind of find was that for all their faults, the UK has a little bit more of a balanced media. So there isn't one side reporting this as totally all good, the way that we have certain news outlets that just go, they're the right color on the ticket, so we gonna back them, whatever they doing, whatever they saying. And I think the other thing is that they have the other thing that I was finding in my research is that they have better electoral districts. So, and when it comes to voting and who votes who in, there's a little bit more fair alignment. Whereas there's a thing called gerrymandering that happens in the US where politicians go, the people that we're going to redraw the lines of who votes in this election, and we're going to draw them around basically where people who believe a certain thing live, right? Where it's Republican areas. And I think those two things make it very difficult to remove people from office when they go in crazy. And so as much as this is another tumultuous episode in the epilogue of Boris Johnson's time as prime minister, I think, I don't know, is there room to be hopeful?
It doesn't look that way at the moment, especially because at least immediately after the markets fell, they brought in a new finance minister who almost wiped the entire budget that was proposed and are trying something new. What it actually is, what they did, right, is everything is getting more expensive because of COVID. We've covered that. And now here people are sitting protesting because energy prices are too high, living costs are too high, transportation is too high. And the government says, okay, cool, this is what we'll do. We'll let you pay a little less on your tax, but we'll stick you with a bill on the back end that's going to be even more costly on everything else. So your income tax might be cheaper, but your consumer taxes might be higher. Everything else is higher. So already, I think the British people are at a sensitive place with how expensive life is. And this right here from the government was just an absolutely terrible decision, but it does look like one that was made being pushed by, she was following orders is how it would come off to me.
No room for hope.
No, there is room for hope, guys. Next week. next week we'll find the room. We'll find the room for hope.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. The US are coming up on their midterm elections, so we're electing all sorts of governors. The House of Representatives completely turns over. We reelect 1/3 of the Senate. We are electing attorney generals and secretary of states, and it's going to be really interesting. I think we're also in a period of stagnation where President Biden now had a Democratic Congress and hasn't been able to do much done because even though he had the majority, they haven't been able to get the votes to pass things. Typically what happens is during a president's, during their term, when the midterm elections come around, the House typically flips to not the party of the president. So what that looks like for us is a continuation of just bipartisan bickering, not a lot happening. So this is why, if there's a reason to vote and to get informed, it's to know how to try and vote in mass so that you can elect people that aren't going to just keep things completely stagnant like this.
Yep.
Bleak outlook, but join us next week.
There you go. Elect people that can be in your best interest. And some people that have given us some things that are in our best interest are the people that continuously tune in to hear us speak about one section of this show more than any other. Rec and Review.
What did you just say?
Rec and Review fans, welcome.
This is another celebration.
Spoiler alert, we're talking about hip hop again.
Yeah, we're back at it. And it's great because, since we've been in this space, I feel like it's been good energy. It's been good vibes.
Good vibes.
But what we need to do right in this space is we need to have a little calendar thing that says days without some whack shit. And it's like a list, like, days without an accident.
Mm.
And we keep it running until some whack shit happens.
Well, we've been listening to a lot of good music. Hip hop is in a good place. We've been going to some live shows. We've been engaging with some cool creatives. This week, we have been presented with Snofall. Would our calendar in this instance continue, or have we indeed stumbled on some whack?
Nah, the calendar continues.
The calendar continues.
Days without incident, weeks without incident, 2.
We're 2 weeks without incident.
Did the baby last week. That little baby was fire.
Good.
Sold 213K.
That's more than Kendrick.
Woo! Shout out to the little baby.
It's more than Kendrick.
And now we back at it with Snofall, man. So yeah, definitely not whack. And definitely as a hip hop fan that is slowly aging into an old head, I'm always appreciative when the people that I came up with in hip hop are still putting out incredible content. Jeezy is a veteran of the game. Thug Motivation is one of the most celebrated mixtapes in hip hop of his era, for sure. And for him to be able to drop something, the title speaks to the times we're in, into pop culture. The music is incredible and doesn't sound dated. Hats off to Jeezy, man.
Fun fact about the album cover of Thug Motivation with Jeezy standing in front of all the money, or behind the things of money. Jeezy the legend has it, he pulls up to the set and they had fake money in those boxes. He then calls his man, tells him to get that out of there and bring in actual $1 million in cash. And so the money that he is standing in front of is his $1 million in cash. Young Jeezy, 2005, 6.
And if you can take the energy that is embodied in that story right there and put it into music, you're going to have something the streets going to like a lot.
Yeah, Jeezy is definitely that luxury street rap for sure.
Yeah, and it was fire to be able to listen to that in a very grand way. When we're running it, this past Friday, you said something interesting. You were like, Drama's here. Mm-hmm. And it was surprising to you that we would still be listening to Drama shout over, rappers in 2022.
We might have a young audience that doesn't, know the DJ Drama, Gangsta Grills era. They might not know the Dad Piff era. They might not know the Jiggy Biggie mixtape era,
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. Why don't you take off your backpack, dude? It's okay.
Come on, man.
Get comfortable.
We've been loving this hip hop thing for a long time, So DJ Drama definitely had a huge presence within that 2003 to 2005 era. Being on many mixtapes. Almost your rite of passage was to drop mixtapes through DJ Drama. So mixtapes, I don't want to explain the difference between a mixtape and not a mixtape. But that being said,
I actually think we should do that because people keep acting like they can't tell. There's a big difference. We could have that conversation another time.
What's up with the shaking?
But I digest. My bad.
Yeah, I mean, mixtapes back then were usually heavily sampled and also not official releases that were free for download. Now mixtapes, I think, are just a term that is a label term to not associate with an album.
Yeah, I don't care if you call something a mixtape or a playlist or whatever, but if it's available for free, if you're even like outside of streaming services, right? Like if it's free and I don't have to subscribe to Apple Music or Spotify to listen to it, that's a mixtape.
Fair enough. Well, Jeezy's always has some of the best mixtapes. Thug Motivation, like you had mentioned, was a street classic, as has been put. And we also have now Snowfall comes out, DJ Drama, many years later. From 2005 to 2022, we get DJ Drama, who seems to be everywhere. This has been some of my favorite Drama. Me and you used to joke back in the day how annoying Drama was, but I think now, I think there's a bit of a maturity and styling towards it. And it sounds so fitting for this album. It's very cohesive to me. Some certain bangers, something to ride to, something to bump loud at the crib. I really enjoyed this listen. I really enjoyed this album.
Yeah, it's very grand. You know what I mean? It's like from the opening track, the choice of production it's not subtle. Beats are interesting. We have a lot of conversations about cinematic hip hop, I think this is, I mean, in places it's that, but in other places it's just like, it's Jeezy using the weight of an industry veteran really well. I have access to a certain level of caliber of beats and production and engineering and equipment, and I feels like he utilized all of that to bring the
Give me an A-OK producer.
Mike Chiggity.
Yeah, I'm sweating heavy as hell.
Wait, does he have a mic check, mic check? Mic check, mic check.
How we doing, producer?
We bike.
We back. Look at that.
There we go. There we go.
Technical difficulties. I
Man.
think the content was hot and we burned the mic.
Yeah, we burned out the mic. Or the spirit of Gucci Mane was hating.
And shout out to my dog Shoni for texting me, man. I appreciate that, man.
Good look, man.
Appreciate
good
that.
Good look.
Listen, a lot of good music over here. I like street hip hop. I love street hip hop. I love luxury gangster rap in specific. That might be my favorite genre of hip hop, you know? So listening to this, I think it fits. That MJ Jeezy is dope.
Crazy.
That ESTG with Jeezy, I think are some highlights if I'm going specifically name by name. Like I said, the intro, Snowfall, very reminiscent of Young Dolph's 100 Shots with the delayed drop at the end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he waits 2 minutes, almost 3 minutes before the drop comes in, which is something Young Dolph did, which I thought was an interesting way to pay homage to that. And then you have MJ Jeezy, Street Cred, Most Hated, Scarface, King's Crown. Those are my favorites off the album.
Let me get that track list off your boy.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at that right quick.
Can I ask our producer if has the producer checked out the album?
I'm a big while we wait for the response on that, I'm a big fan of Bruh. That Most Hated goes crazy. That MJ Jeezy is dope. Scarface is dope. My Accountant, King's Crown. Yeah, man. I messed with this heavy. I'm down to give this a 4 out of 5. It's good to have another week of saying that.
And it just cut.
What? All about threes. I'm still live over here, baby.
Nice.
I'm still coasting. So you know what?
Wrap it.
I think we're gonna get up on out of here.
We're gonna get up out of here before technology.
The powers that be, we done said too much about birds. They chewing on the wires.
Listen, birds might not be real. Liz Trust also is not real. Educate yourself, protect yourself. Because we know, man.
Yeah, we know, man. We know that you could be anywhere in the world, but you choose to be here with us, rocking with us through all that we go through.
Thank you.
In the world and in this studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
Y'all are real.
Thank you.
Right? And this is a real celebration of celebrating.
Thank you.
This is a real celebration of life. This is a real celebration of how good it is to be real. Don't it feel good, way?
Feels good.
Just checking. All right.
I also might be a CIA bird agent. You never know.
Yo.
Check on your local birds, man.
We gone.
Yeah, I get that. But is we live though? Is we